this slight drizzle is a ho'ailona. And I welcome it because it opens the way for me to recognize that our culture relies on signs that help us direct what we do and how we're going to do it. So for me, the e homai, this is my cue. So it's a good beginnings, and I hope that you'll be able to be enriched with knowledge and information. Let me do something very Western, okay? I've got a total of 15 sessions, hour and a half long, and the hour and a half will vary between hour 15, 20 minutes to maybe 2 hours long, depending on the focus of the topic that we're going to be talking about and the interest of those of you who are sitting here wanting to learn. For this semester, this is really a trial, a pilot effort of my providing information that meets the needs for a bachelor university. Yeah. And so I'm very conscious of being very open and receptive for cues from you to let me know whether I'm going this way or whether I'm making sense. So I want you to know it's okay to raise the question so that it'll help me to determine how I might represent the idea so that you can understand. The key in anything Hawaiian is communication for understanding. Otherwise, you only have the form, which is wonderful. But if half understand the form and the essence, and the other half only see the form, but don't know what it means, then my job is to make sure the essence is understood. And that's how I want these sessions to be done. So if any one of you hear a Hawaiian word and don't feel you have to keep your mouth shut, ask me. Or share your mana'o about what you think it means, because there's probably more than one person in the group who has questions along those lines, yeah? And you need to know I come from a social work background. So as I talk about Hawaiian culture, I'm always looking at it in terms of its relationship to how people live. Because our practices are so wonderful. It helps you to be in harmony with your family, helps you to be in harmony with others. But importantly, it helps you to be in harmony with your surroundings, your environment, the aina, both on land and makai. So it's with that kind of perspective that I'll share with you my philosophy, which is Ho'oponopono is a way of living. Think about that. It gives recognition to the fact we're not gods. We're not aumakua. Some of us may have a gift that allows us to be extra sensitive. But there's a majority of us that have to start from ground zero. And I gotta admit to you, I started from ground zero. And I started from ground zero when I got into graduate school. And at that point, at home, I live Hawaiian because I had a pure Hawaiian father. And then I take off the Hawaiian hat when I went to the university. I put on the haole hat. So it forced me to kind of be half sometimes, half the other times. But I was so fortunate after I got my degree in social work to be at an agency that recognized why are we helping Hawaiians with Western ideas, with Western ways. That is not to say it didn't help. It helped our people who were having difficulties living in this society. But our philosophy at the agency was, how come we're not beginning where our families are at? Why do we begin with the haole perspective with Hawaiian families? And so it made sense to us because the university never teach us that. And so Tutu Pukui, who became my mentor, spent a good 15 years of her life plus being a culture consultant at the Queen Liliuokalani Children's Center. And it was my work with families who were having trouble that I took a situation to her. And I have permission from this family to share this mo'olelo. And wherever I can, I will use mo'olelos that give you an idea of why I say Ho'oponopono is a way of life. So, in this situation, the woman was known to the state hospital. And the more she told the doctors about hearing the bells, about wanting to dance hula, and she go to the building rooftops where they have like a cafeteria, dance hula at times where it's not scheduled. Because you know, Hawaiian experiences don't come by the clock. When it happens, you experience it. So the more she told the doctor her mo'olelo, the more medication she got and the longer she was locked up. So when I was working with her, helping her to deal with her stresses so she could become a better parent with her children, she happened to share her dreams, the experiences. So I said, you heard bells. Where have you heard bells before? And she said, when I was a small girl, the hale was near the Catholic Church. And so they went to church. So I asked them, what did the church do for you? She said, when I left the church, my problems and stresses went away. So I said, so when you hear the bells, you're needing help to deal with the stresses that you have inside. And she said, yeah, Auntie. So I told the doctor that, but he thought I was more crazy. And he gave me more pills. So after a while, she learned to shut her mouth. But one day she told me about a dream that she had. And the dream was about her grandmother, dressed in black, shaking her fingers, looking at her, the grandchild, now a woman, now a mother. And she got frightened, so she came to tell me that dream. So I said to her, I don't know how to interpret dreams. If you give me permission, I go ask Tutu Pukui. You want that kind of help? She said, yeah, Auntie, help me learn. So I did. I took it to Tutu. But I also knew that when she was a young girl, she was lavehanai to the grandparents. And they were known in the community to do ho'oponopono. Because she remembered she sleeps early, but when the call comes, her grandmother wears black mu'umu'u, gets the Bible, and have to bring the girl with her. So she used to go, but it was okay for her to sleep on the side. So I said, Grandma wore black and she did ho'oponopono. So when Tutu asked about the symbolic meaning behind the color black, it gave us a cue. And Tutu said, maybe the dream means, how come you're not doing ho'oponopono? You know ho'oponopono. So I said, what you think? Does it mean death for you? Or you think, like Tutu said, it's your grandma who came to you in the dream and she wanting to help you. She coming with a solution that you have to do for yourself. And she said, I never think about that, but I believe if my Tutu was still alive, that's exactly what she would do with me, ho'oponopono. And so I said, you want to learn ho'oponopono? She smiled and she said, Auntie, I don't like learn myself. I said, if you invite me, I join you on that journey. She said, can we do it together? I said, can I go to Tutupukui again? At that point, approaching Tutupukui, based upon the needs of a family that was looking for ways to deal with mental health issues. This woman had been released, but had weekly appointments at the psychiatric clinic. Medication was part of the treatment plan. At the end of 3 years, she only had to go to the psychiatric clinic to do follow-up maintenance once every 6 months. No more medication. And because she gave me permission to go on this journey with her to learn, Tutu liked the idea because her purpose at the Children's Center was to give back to the Hawaiian families those practices that they used to have in their lifetime, but they were made to feel that it was paganistic. It was not good. And so she welcomed the opportunity to help social workers who are working with families who are dealing with life's issues, to learn about Hawaiian solutions to Hawaiian problems. And so for the 3 years, we moved from my helping her first to begin identifying. Can you tell when the stresses in your body are increasing? And she said, yeah. So I asked, what do you do? She said, take my medication. I said, okay, take your medication, but we're going to do something else. And so she was very open to this. And so we began to talk about balance in her life. That when the balance is out of sync, this is when she's going to get the body cues. Yeah. So I interjected into our treatment discussions. What do we mean by Lokahi and Pono? Yeah. Pono is justice. It is righteous. And it is that which is needed to right the wrong. Pono, in this case, revolved around my helping mama to begin recognizing when she's out of sync, when she's off balance. And then when we began to talk about it, then I'd get her to talk about what's happening in your family that's throwing you off balance. And so that's the kind of discussion we had. She got to the point where months later, when I asked how things went, she said, you know, we were out of sync, so I called the kids together and we had a discussion and sat down. I found out the hihia, the pilikia, and then they had to forgive each other, because we cannot have within the family the fighting and the bickering. Family is about love for each other. So she began to learn how to help herself get balance. One way of looking at Pono, it is the balance or the alignment of mind, spirit, and body. In the Hawaiian way, it is the alignment of your piko of the po'o, the piko of the navel, the piko of the ma'i. That is the alignment. But when this alignment is off, then you know you have some issues that you're not dealing with. Yeah? And the Hawaiians believe too that if you're avoiding dealing with issues within the family, you take those issues when you go into the community. Not just within your family, but you carry it with you. Then you carry it in your job. You carry it with your children when they misbehave in the community, because it's a reflection of you. And so in the treatment approach with this woman, through Ho'oponopono, we began to identify what are those things that are like knots that entangle your children with each other, your children with you, your children with their classmates, their children in school. Because I believe if we could help her identify this and learn how to deal with it, the psychiatric part was going to diminish. And it did. It got to the point where when I meet with them once a week, she would just review with me what she did with the family. And it was right on the button. Then we began to talk about, now what about your future? Now that you've dealt with this major part, what do you want in life? She wanted to get a job. So I said, okay, go get the newspaper. With her, I sit down, we go through the ads, and I say, okay, you read through here, you put a check mark for something that you're interested in. She makes the check marks, but she goes to school on behalf of the children, and she sees teacher assistants. And she looked at that, and there was an ad. And she said, but you know, Auntie, if I apply for this, once they hear I was in the Pupule house, nobody going to take me. So I looked at her and I said, I beg to differ with you. I said, that was the past. I said, but look at what you do now. Aloha, welcome. You need this. Give her this. Yeah. What you're just witnessing is a protocol. Women, your open legs is kapu. So you notice I have a dress in, and so I want to be sure no more a'ula. So I brought the extra cloth to cover the front. But I've got a nice seat that's very comfortable where you folks are sitting on the hard cement. And I've gone through that where on the hard cement, how I gotta shift. And when you shift your legs, when the ho'i'e. Yeah. Remember that, ladies. In places that are sacred, in places of protocol, be very conscious of what you wear. If you have to bring along another piece of cloth, like a pa'u or pario, there's purpose for that, so that you don't offend the others who are looking at you, and you don't offend the spirituality of this hale. Yeah. So, moving on with the mo'olelo. So, I disagreed. I said, you made tremendous progress. You used to go every week to the clinic. How often are you going now? Once every 6 months. And you had medication containers. How many do you have now? It's down to 1. So I said, don't let anybody tell you you don't know how to take control of your life for yourself and your family. And so what you and I are going to do, we're going to practice, we're going to role play. I'm going to be the interviewer, you're coming to apply. I want you to be prepared for the kind of questions that are going to come your way. And I want you to think about what we just talked about, your progress. It's not my progress, it's your progress. You made the change yourself. And we did that. She got an appointment. She went in for the interview. She got the job. And after managing all of this, she'd come with me, and then she'd still meet with me. So I talk, okay, what about your stresses? How are you dealing with that? She would then recap what she does, and she learned about ho'oponopono with the family, but she also talked about stresses from the job. And so my effort at this point was to link her with the appropriate individual at the new site. My job is to work myself out of a job, to empower her to the point where on her own, she knows where she can go for help. She learned to do that. And by 3 years' time, because behavior change, mental health transformation, that can happen in 6 months. It takes a long time because the habits have been there for years. So in the work of helping today's Hawaiian individuals and families, if you think you can go in, do ho'oponopono, and the job is done, you're only scratching the surface, because they have formed habits of dysfunctioning, not knowing what to do. Yeah. And in this case, I was learning too. But the social work helped me to see she was a person in need of help, and that my personal beliefs and biases needed to be kept separate from hers. So in the ho'oponopono that you're going to be learning about is, you have to know yourself. You have to know what your assets are. But you need to know what are the unfinished issues that you put aside, that you don't deal with. Yeah. If your intention is genuine, you communicate with that person. You don't have to use hyperbolic words. You communicate to reach for their na'au, the seat of intelligence and emotions for the Hawaiian. You've got the beginnings of forming the kind of relationship and assets for yourself to look at healing, to begin exploring healing as a potential for your career. Begin with yourself, yeah. And the last time I heard from this woman, I met the children, so I asked, how's mama? And they said, she eagle eye, she even get eyes behind her head. Good news for me, yeah. The timing had been right to terminate with her and to let her go on the journey herself. So in a sense, Ho'oponopono became a way of life that allowed her to get reconnected with her kupuna from the past. Yeah. So that's a part of what Ho'oponopono is about. You don't have to be born with a gift. You have to be willing to understand who you are and what you bring to the situation. Yeah. And as I learned more about Ho'oponopono, I found that the values upon which Ho'oponopono are based are the same kind of values and expectations my father had for me and my sister. No conflict there. Yeah. So, Pono for an individual. And those who are in school, you're going to have many times when you're out of sync. So, how do you begin to address this? Yeah. You need to look at, have you been avoiding it? So you find that there's some physical symptoms. It gets displayed in the body. Yeah. And that's just the beginning part, because after that you have to begin thinking, what's been happening that I've not dealt with? Then you get to the problem issues. So I know in this hale, we want good things. We want good energy. But in Ho'oponopono, can have good energy unless the subject allows you to talk about and think about, oh yeah, I can connect with that mo'olelo because I remember in my own life I'm doing this. So Ho'oponopono requires you to look at how you conduct your living and yourself. Your body gives you some evidence. You begin to determine, how can I alleviate it? What seems to be the cause that precipitates this? And then you find the treatment that you need. Yeah. Sometimes it's the mind, too much stress on the mind because school, university life forces you to stretch it beyond your comfort zone, forces you to apply areas of your thinking, of looking at things that are different from different perspectives. So if you know that that's an area you have difficulty with, go to the places that have the resources that can help you. Like with the woman that I worked with, and I said to her, no, come to me. You go to the school and you talk with your teacher who you can talk with. The same thing in this environment. the spirit. Many of us have become disconnected with the spirituality aspects of our culture because we've inherited that attitude from our grandparents. My parents told me, put the Hawaiian aside, you go learn the Haole. You're going to get ahead. So I had that message too. But I wanted to tell my father, but we live Hawaiian at home. I didn't dare say that to him because I would have been an unhappy camper. But that was the truth of it. Many of us who come from Hawaiian families, in our home life, it's different from when you're out in the public. And so, like my family, my mother was very close to her culture. She was not pure Hawaiian, but her mother, pure Japanese, had been adopted by a pure Hawaiian family. So she lived the Hawaiian culture, spoke fluent Hawaiian. So both sides of my genealogy, I was impacted with maintaining the culture in the home. And many of you here who are part Hawaiian or full Hawaiian, that's the life that you experience. So how did I adjust? I learned if I'm in the Western world, I wear my Western hat. I have my MSW degree. When I go home, my father knocked that hat off and said, "You're still my daughter. No get so ho'oki'eki'e." And I understood what he meant. So I had to learn when it was appropriate. Yeah. So I offer that only as one way of dealing with what appears to be contradictions. It's not really contradictions from my perspective. Because for me to be Pono, I felt good about how I felt and functioned in Western society. Nobody gonna keep me down. In the Hawaiian, I was born a hiapo. So as a hiapo, the oldest within that generation, I knew I had obligations and responsibilities, but I had a lot of privileges I never saw as privileges. I often thought of them as punishment. Because I was restricted from doing the happy things that my cousins were allowed to do because I had to stay put and do these things with my grandparents. Luckily, I had been reared to respect our elders. I shut my mouth and I only complained to my mother. And the wisdom she had was, shut your mouth and pay attention. Your time will come. Good lessons, yeah? And in our family, every night with our tutu, we have pule ohana. It incorporated the Bible. But previous to the beginning of pule ohana, we had mo'olelo about kamapua'a and pele. And so I learned all about those things listening. I love the stories. Somehow she'd weave it into the Bible studies. I had to learn a verse. And I always remembered God is love. But all the mo'opuna did the same thing too. Oh, Tutu would get upset. And she bought Bibles for us. So we would go and then we'd look for the easiest passages. And when we have ohana, then we repeat that. Yeah. So at one level, I had Christian experiences. But from that same tutu who was reared in Hakipu'u on the windward side of the Oʻahu, she had all the stories of Hi'iaka and Pele as well as Kamapua'a, because that was his domain. Yeah. What she could not do was to explain the rationale behind their actions. That didn't come into place until I began to get into social work, to begin to understand the depth for the function behind the things that Kamapua'a and Hi'iaka did. So my journey throughout my life after getting a master's degree was trying to put it all together now. And after 2 years with Tutupukui, I said, you know, the Hawaiian side, the Haole side, that's all me. There's no separation. I learned to navigate wherever I went. But Ho'oponopono was always the philosophy. Ho'oponopono as a way of life. Because I learned very early, because we're not gods, we unconsciously can create tension with people by the way we come across, by the selection of words that we use, and we don't intend it to be negative, but from that person's perspective, it's a put down. Yeah. So I learned to become very sensitive, armed with this new perspective of looking at mental health practices in the Hawaiian fashion. Ho'oponopono became the structure for me to grab a hold of and to begin practicing it with my children. Because if I was going to use it with the families, I better know what the heck I'm doing myself.
Nice.
And luckily, my partner of 53 years felt the same way. And with the two of us, the responsibility, the kuleana shifted from him when he wasn't home to me when I was the parent at home with the children. And we did it for everything where we identified entanglements. And pretty soon my kids were learning it. And they go to school. And then my daughter comes home and said, you know, Ma, this girl came up and she was telling me this and this and this. And I told her. And I said, oh, are you practicing Ho'oponopono now? I wanted her to be alert that she was picking up that lifestyle of recognizing pilikia. And because she was the hiapo in our family, I wanted to be sure she understood with that privilege comes strong kuleana to not tamper indiscriminately. Yeah. So in my family, it's been a way of life. And the kids learn that they have to be pono first before they can help somebody else. If you're not pono yourself, how can you go and help others? Yeah. Lokahi. Lokahi is that state of being between elements, between people in relationships, where there's harmonious balance. When talking about Ho'oponopono at the elementary, intermediate school level, my husband and I figured we got to begin where the kids are at. So if we go into the deep Hawaiian of the Kumu, so we came up with the idea of doing triangles where the sides and the angles are equal. But if there's pilikia, that means there's tension. So there's pulling, and it causes the sides of the triangle to change. Some to get bigger or longer, and the other side to get smaller or shorter. That the children understood. No more Lokahi. So we would talk with them about the equal-sided triangle, where each corner represented an important part of Hawaiian culture. At the top corner was a belief in the Akua, the gods of old, or Ke Akua. And then there's the Kini Akua, the lesser gods, known by different names, but equally as powerful and as a guide in our lives. There's the Aumakua, that is related to family lineage. And that Aumakua is in your family line. Yeah. I got to share with you this experience. I was reared with a grandfather who was a healer. My grandmother, pure Japanese, can see ghosts, can see spirits, and she can tell him if it's good or if it's not good. He was the one that went in to mahiki the place, exorcise the spirits and the ghosts, so that it becomes clean before the family moves in. So from the mo'olelo I got from my mother, I was reared with a lot of his heroic deeds. We idolized my grandfather because he was a healer, and there were so many instances where I had examples I could fall back on because it was part of my family history. So Aumakua of the family. When I was asked to do the project at the Children's Center to test out the viability of Ho'oponopono with today's families, this was 20th century families at that time, I was so excited because I said, oh, the pathway is opening for me to be like my tutu man. I was so excited. I said, yes, 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 I want to do it. My head got big. 2 days later, my head went shrink. I began to have self-doubts because I also knew if you didn't do it in the proper way, the negative impact would not just affect me, but my innocent children, my family, and I could not have that happen. And so I looked and I thought about it, and I remembered in some families, certain jobs, certain careers, a kapu, you cannot do that. Because I know with Pele and Namaka'akahai, the sister of ocean water, the one that carries the Pele name, go by water, things happen. So I knew these stories, and that's the negative part, yeah. So I turned to Tutupukui, and this is what she said to me. You need to know your genealogy to know the kapu, what is kapu and what is noa. Kapu is restricted. Noa means it's free for you to become involved in it. So I thought I knew my genealogy because I got genealogy folders like this. But that's only names. It doesn't give me the history behind it. Without realizing, I was taking Hawaiian courses at the university, and I was reading all these mo'olelo, not realizing I'm now going to connect the mo'olelo with my genealogy and my determination to do ho'oponopono. All of that came together in the 3 years at the Children's Center as I developed myself as a professional social worker. So, I learned on my father's side. One of my ancestors is Kaiakea from Molokai. At a point in his life, he became the kahu of Puama, later evolved into the Kalaipahua gods. But from all that I could gather from family mo'olelo and what I read, he was a beneficent ali'i. He never used it to harm people. And so I said, that's me. I don't want to harm people. I want to be just like my ancestor. And so I said, that's in my genealogy. And so I learned about Aumakua for that part of my father's lineage. Yeah. And so that satisfied me, because now I felt the way was clear for me to embark on the journey in healing the Hawaiian way. On my mama's side, like I said earlier, my grandfather was a healer. And I knew and I was convinced about that. But there was even more recent evidence because my ohana from Halawa, Molokai, my first cousin, we'd be home Saturday night doing things. The next morning, Sunday, I see a bag packed. Where you going, cousin? You not staying with us? She said, I gotta go holo holo. She didn't say what. But what I would find out later is that she had a dream that told her she was needed to do ho'oponopono. So I had a first cousin who was doing it, confirmed even more that this was the right path. But within my household, my father, the pure Hawaiian, was adamant against it. He said, because you don't know how to protect yourself. So I argued with him. You know, he raised me to be hiapo. So after I became an adult and I was married, not equal status, but I had more privilege to present my position. And I said to him, I'm not out there to injure people. I'm there to help them to better their lives. And I really meant it. And I said to him, Tutupuku'i has offered to be a part of my journey in this special project. It was a research practitioner project. So if I need help, I will turn to her and she will help guide me. He still wasn't good about that idea because he didn't want anything to happen to his precious mo'opuna. And I could see that. But I was pa'akiki. I made up my mind, this is the direction I was going, because I felt it in my na'au. And I knew in my DNA, I had all of the indications it would be okay. I just had to know where to go for the help I needed. And then one evening, with another auntie who came to have dinner, that auntie started drilling me and telling me, no, you get out of that. I won't allow it. She won't allow it. But I couldn't say you can't do anything. I was respectful. I shut my mouth. I said, I hear what you're saying, but in my na'au, it's right. Not realizing my mother on the side is going through an experience of noho. Noho is spirit possession. And I was talking to Auntie and noticing this happening to my mother from a jolly Hawaiian matronly tutu. She stood up straight in her seat. Her posture became rigid and firm, and I could feel eyes piercing at me. And when I turned, I was captivated by the eyes that were looking into me, as if those eyes were looking into my soul. I opened myself, and I spoke from my heart. But the auntie talking on the side, seeing what happened, but telling me, feeling she has a responsibility to deter me. And then suddenly my mother spoke up. The spirit in her spoke up and said, your way is clear. The silent stranger is leaving. Well, I took that mo'olelo to Tupukui. And she said, so who's the silent stranger? I said, I don't know. She asked, who did you think it was that possessed your mother? I said, the first thought was my grandfather, because he's the healer of our family, that I know. But I said, the voice didn't sound like him. Then Tutu said, why did you think of your Tutu man? I said to her, because he had this room, and he took food into that room with his God. My mother, of all of his children, was always maha'oi. And she'd ask her father, where are you taking the food, Papa? He said, never mind, no ask questions. And then the next day, the food container he brings out, and she sees it. And she said, I bet you went inside there, go eat some more. And he said to her, Sat! You get away from here. So Tutu said, your Tutu man's aumakua was a silent stranger to your mother. And it made sense. Yeah? So, what does my experience tell you? For me, Ho'oponopono as a way of life connected me with my spirituality. Yeah. And in the process, I learned about other aumakua of my ohana, which is Pelema and Kapo. But on my Tutu lady side, the windward side of Oʻahu, Kamapua'a. So I know I have the ku, but I got the hina. So in terms of being pono, I have to be very conscious. I have capability to overreact or to underreact. So how do I help myself live in today's world? And that is to make sure I educate myself about my lineage and my family, so that I'm better able to use the best of both positions to do the kind of work that I do with Hawaiian families. Yeah. Not all of you are going to have opportunity to know this. But what I think you need to know is each of you have DNA from your ancestors, ikawa kahiko. And if you prepare yourself right, because that is your iini, the link is there. It's up to you to open yourself to be the best that you can be, to avail yourself of your family resources, that's embedded in you. We have aumakua mana, but it is only used if you prepare yourself to use it with the right intentions and in the right way. You may not be the chosen one to get the gift, but Tutu says there is mana that allows you to receive training. And the training that you will go through, you're going to be able to pick up much faster than some other people, because there's an inherent thread that's within you. And that's what happened to me. Intellectually, I went the Haole way, went to Kamehameha school and learned how to eat with the proper utensils, how to set up the table spread, how to develop conversation at a table with people you don't know. I learned all of those things. It took another opportunity for me to learn what I truly wanted to do and become. So the potential is there, and not limited to Hawaiians. Orientals have DNA in them too, from their ancestors. Pacific Islanders have the same potential too. When we talk about aumakua or family spirituality, that DNA that's inside of you is inherited. So what I'm talking about is not just for Hawaiians, but think about it, yeah? Because each society determines what is the lifestyle for that society. Many of us have suffered losses through grief. Some of these individuals are beloved kupuna who have gone to Po. Those kupuna that have done his heroic deeds, that today may be icons, but once they hala, once they go, become elevated because of their deeds, in their actions, in the work that they do. So the potential is there. So when you're down and out, is there somebody in the family that's now gone that you think about, that you turn to? I wish you were here to help me. And begins you to think along, what would they do? What would they advise? Those kupuna that are deceased are up here. Okay? But what's really important is we have kinolau. They're all about us. They help us to remember, to remind ourselves, you're not alone. But open your maka at another dimension of spirituality. And I began to learn about the tea leaf, yeah, for the God Lono, yeah, and the use of tea leaf as a pali, as a protection. Tea leaf to ward out spirits, to exorcise spirits. Tea leaf for its practical uses in cooking and in medicine. If you're up hiking, there's an injury, and there's a scrape and a scratch, and you need medicine, scrape the chlorophyll. Clean the leaf, scrape the chlorophyll. Use the mu'u of the tea leaf. It's unfurled. When you open it, that inside is sterile, like a Band-Aid. put it on the area that needs to be protected. Get the dry tea leaf, soak it so it's pliable, and make cord, and then tie it so it stays on. Practical use. And that's from Kawakahiko, the Akua. So we've lost many of those areas of knowledge because you'd rather pay the money, go to the pharmacy, and go buy the salve. Think about it. So in Ho'oponopono, I'd like us to learn about self-care. Those practical things that you may have around your house. Not just the functional part of self-care, but what it represents and how the Hawaiian spirituality in this body form still helps you today. Nothing bad about that. Okay. The other side is honua, the environment. It is so important for today especially because of the pollution that's occurring. The greed to see that those things that are part of necessary for our living are commodity items to be sold. Different perspective. We've forgotten that there's a relationship. Do you sell your spiritual entities or do you malama? Yeah. There's more in that environment that can be discussed. And then we get to the other side, which is kanaka, mankind. That is our focus. Mankind and their spirituality. So every one of you have this potential. Every one of you tap into it. One more mo'olelo. We got time for one more mo'olelo?
Yes, Auntie. Is that all right? Okay.
Thank you for coming. One more mo'olelo. Okay. In my journey of developing and training myself, I have teenage daughters, and of course, the boys come over. And there was a period in our life I struggled with this rebellion to be independent, but yet want the privileges of being a member of the family that mommy and daddy gotta take care. Well, one of their friends was so nice, pure Japanese. I aloha that boy, and I went hanai him. One time, the parents called to say they rushed him to the hospital, and within 48 hours, he was in a deep coma. The doctors did everything they needed to do, but they couldn't find out the cause or provide the treatment. So they told the parents, we've done all we can. The rest, up to you. So the mama, being Buddhist and pure Japanese, went to the Buddhist temple, tried to get help. Nothing transpired within several days. He had joined with other friends, New Hope. And so she called upon them to come and provide help. Well, she waited, and the week went by, and she was more worried. So she came to the Hawaiian family, and she said, you folks are my last hope. And you know, my gut instinct is, if that's my son, my Hanai son, I'm going to do whatever I can. I didn't know what. But the olelo came out. And you know, Hawaiians have a saying, the spoken word has mana. It's a commitment. And I knew this, but I was very confident that somehow we would figure something out. And then my husband tells me, he's going to a conference on the mainland the next day. He's not going to be home. And then He's the head of our family. He's the po'o. And I rely on him. But when he said that, I said, okay, I step up to the challenge. I didn't know what we're going to do, and I went to sleep. I told Emily this mo'olelo. I went to sleep, and in my head, you know, when you're preoccupied, you go to bed, your brain waves are still functioning. They're still operating. Suddenly, hi'iaka ikapolio pele came to my head. I was amazed. I got up. I was alert because I knew that was my cue. I nudged my husband with my elbow. And I said, I know what we're going to do. He said, what? I gotta go mainland. I said, okay, tell me. So I told him, hi'iaka ikapolio pele. So he said, what does that mean? I said, we're going to do what Hi'iaka did on her trip to bring Lohiao back into his body. But you don't know what she did. I said, I don't know what she did. I don't read the language newspaper, so I'm not going to have that ike. But I'm a trained social worker. I put on my Western hat and I said, she oli, to get his attention for the akua, the aumakua of her family, to help get him so that he, as a kahuna po'i uhane, she could then massage his spirit back into the body. I said, that's what we're going to do. But we're not going to do it ancient style. We're going to do it modern way. We know this boy. If he makes a promise, he will keep it no matter what. So our daughters, they're going to remind him of everything they talked about before this happening, and they're going to remind him of his promise. Not one, not two, but the things they talked about they're going to do over the summer. And you hold him to that promise and you insist he has to come back. But I said, you also talk about the good fun times that you had. The times that you guys were so rascal that we never found out about it, and you can have your private laugh together. And I said, the other one, we know she massaged the uhani through the big toe. We're not masseurs. But baby, our hands are strong, so you're the one that's really needed. Karang his toes. Massage all of that. And all the flesh that's just underneath. But massage the toes, because Tutu said, the spirit is massaged through the joints. So it's going to be very painful. Massage. What I knew was there are nerve ends from all parts of our body that's in our feet. That's in our hands. So stimulate the nerve ends to do the job that they're supposed to do. But you work the uhani through the joints. 3 days, we take turns. They see the muscle move of his eyelids. They're so excited. So they ask him, if you hear us, move your eyelid. He did. So they told the nurse, guess what she said? Muscle spasm. Oh, burst the balloon. So they kept working, but after their part was done, we took over another team. So she said, Ma, the nurse said it's muscle spasm. I said, so that's okay, we go with that. Because you don't expect the person who's been in a coma to suddenly get up and walk around. So that's okay, we keep on stimulating. The next day, they were so excited and encouraged by what I told them. They put him through the test again. And this time they also asked, hold my hand and apply pressure. And he took a long time, but pretty soon, they felt the pressure from his hand. And then they went to the eyelid. Once they got it, one of them came out and said, Ma, He's doing it. You want to go in? I went in. And so I asked him, I said, if you can hear me, move your eyelids. Not once. I want you to move it twice. He did. I put my hand in his palm. I said, try to grab my hand. I felt his pressure. I felt at that point we had connected with him. He had come back into the body. So I let his mama know. The mama went in. She did her own test with him and she said, oh, Auntie, he's back to us, but he's not opening his eyes. I said, give him time. We just lomi and we talk story with him. The next day, on the 5th day, he opened his eyes. 2 months later, he lost speech. He lost his ability to walk and to move and do things. He had to learn how to feed himself again. But when he became more coherent 2 months later, I asked him, when did you realize the situation you were in? He said, I heard voices, and when I opened my eyes, oh, everything was all white and bright. And so my eyes had to blink. Then he heard the voices again, but he said it came from underneath. When he looked down, he saw his body on the bed. That's when he began to reconnect with the girls. So by the 5th day, he was back with us. Yeah. So each of us has the capability to do critical thinking. We may not be able to do it in the ways of the ancients, but put on your thinking hat. What might be the equivalence to what we do today that will function in the same way? Yeah, it works. And in my family, Ho'oponopono indeed is a way of life.